I was asked to submit the title for my presentation long before I ever wrote it. So if you came here for a conversation about cheap haircuts, you're going to be sadly disappointed. So I apologize in advance. Otherwise, everything's above board. So my name's Jeremy. I'm here. It's February, about 5:50 in the morning, and I'm standing outside in flip-flops and a pair of boxers. About 30 feet to my right, and sorry, my children scribbled all over this last night, and they're 3 and they're 4. They're very precocious. Sorry, about 60 feet to my right, in the early light of morning, I glance over to see a platoon of young men in Army PT gear running in formation, chanting a cadence about the greatness of their platoon, or perhaps a girl back home. It's really kind of hard to tell with those guys. There's a little snow left on the ground, but the temperature must be above freezing because there's a light mist on my exposed shoulders. Despite the cold, I'm rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, realizing that this, in fact, is not a dream. As I look out at the mountains in the distance, I accept the fact that I am standing half naked in northern Bosnia and that I've got work to do. By all accounts, the whole scene I just described could have been avoided. As far as I'm aware, people just don't roll out of bed, wind up in the middle of a war zone half naked. But there I was, 25 years old, and the military was paying me very meagerly to perform duties as a meteorologist. In 2001, a senior airman made $1,423.80 per month. If you divide this by 4 40-hour work weeks, I was being paid $8.90 per hour. Even though this was 2001, candy bars were not a nickel, and the United States Air Force does not adhere closely to a 40-hour work week. This was a terrible wage by any standard. But I'm a little ahead of myself, so let me back up and set the scene on how I found myself in this predicament. Like most teenagers, I held a lot of promise. I was a moderately smart kid from a nice family who was raised on a street that dead-ended into a cornfield. In high school, I was awarded the Outstanding Senior in Business Award, and I set off to make my millions, heading to the University of Northern Iowa. The first thing I learned in college is that nobody cares if you go to class. Go every couple of weeks, read the book, write the major papers, show up to take the test. That's pretty much all you need to do if you want to be. That system of planned mediocrity got me by for quite a while, and it needed to, since I spent most of my mornings hungover. But this is a family-friendly place, and my parents are here even, so I'm not going to get into the details of what happened in college. But I would go on to have more fun in those 3.5 years than most people have in their entire lifetime. Halfway through my 4th year of college, my scheme had finally unraveled, and I was losing my financial aid due to insufficient academic progress. Although I should have been a semester away from graduating, in reality, I only had enough credits to barely qualify as a junior. Most college dropouts from universities take one of 2 paths. If they are usually freshmen, just been there for a semester or 2, they often suck up their pride, move back in with their parents, go to DMAC, get their GPA back up, and head back to college. The second path is people who are late in the game like me. DMAC really has nothing you can do, so you just head off, try to find a job, put some money away, and maybe head back to school one day, though that rarely ever happens. But as you know, I chose a third path. Realizing that I was 22, had absolutely no job skills, and no desire to move back in with the parents whose money I had been squandering for the past 3.5 years, I decided there was only one thing I could really do. And without telling a soul, I made an appointment with the Air Force recruiter. As an aside, even people who've known me for a while don't realize that I come from a military family. My dad had enlisted before being drafted during college in Vietnam. My mother, for reasons I still do not understand, joined the Marine Corps. My brother had joined the Army straight out of high school and wound up in the first Desert Storm. Now, none of my family had made a career out of the military, but it was I lost my place. It was just a place they went for a few years to learn a skill or plan their next move, or maybe just put some distance between them and their hometown while they figured out what they wanted to do with their lives. Now I found myself in the exact same situation, and without knowing it, every single person in my family had imparted on me the same piece of wisdom. If I had to do it all over again, I would have joined the Air Force. A few months later, I found myself standing in formation with 49 other guys on a concrete pad in San Antonio, Texas for my first day of Air Force basic training. Talking with the other recruits, I found out pretty much they all had the same thing in common. Plan A did not work out, and there they were, desperate enough to move across the country. Stories abound about people flunking out of college or stuck in dead-end jobs at the age of 19 and 20. People like me, whose decision-making skills were so poor that they knew that the best option for them would be better just to relinquish their decision-making to the government for a few years. And this was me. I had found my people. 6 months later, my hair had recovered from the trauma of being shaved, and I was off for 6 months of advanced training in Biloxi, Mississippi. Without the confines of basic training, I quickly found myself up to my old shenanigans, only now in the Deep South. Southerners affectionately call Biloxi the Redneck Riviera, with its fake sand beaches and numerous casinos. It is also an hour's drive from the French Quarter in New Orleans. I think you know where this is heading. Despite how many people try it, moving to a new place does not make you a new person. I'd been a 22-year-old irresponsible man-child in Cedar Falls who knew all the drink specials memorized. A year later, I was a 23-year-old man-child who had perfected a ritual called Call Home Fridays across the beach in Biloxi, Mississippi. But now there was one key difference. During the day, I wore a uniform and was now an FAA-certified air traffic controller. Let the fear sink in. However, a strange thing happened. It wasn't a sudden burst of inspiration or the result of a lackluster pep talk by a well-meaning first sergeant. It happened much more imperceptibly. In small degrees, over time, I let some of my selfishness go and start to become part of a thing that was much larger than myself. I realized that service, whether one's country, family, fellow man, or yes, even one's God, if that is your thing, is perhaps as close to the divine as we may be allowed to venture. I understand now why so many servicemen are so devout in their religious beliefs. Because once you give yourself over to something greater, you want to give more and more. The same thing happened to me, but as someone who had little to no faith, it took a different form. I started volunteering more and more. I spent a year of weekends volunteering at a children's hospital in Little Rock. I worked at all the blood drives on base. I took up a second job as a substitute teacher at the suburban Little Rock high schools near the base where I was stationed. And one morning I realized I had finally turned the corner. The high school kid who once did a 10-minute presentation about the financial genius of, yes, Donald Trump, called the University of Northern Iowa and changed his major to social work. So every week in church, as we were getting ready to leave, or as you are right now, probably stealing glances at your cell phone to see what time it is, or contemplating your lunch plans, we close with the words, "Prepare to serve." For me, it never fails to conjure up a memory of my time in uniform. It might be watching the sun set over the military tent city in Ali As-Salim, Kuwait, or maybe I'm slamming down my left heel in cadence as I march in step with my flight around the concrete pad in Texas. Or maybe, perhaps, I'm rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, wildly underdressed for a crisp winter morning in Bosnia. But without fail, I am transported, if only for a fraction of a second. Some people believe that the divine can be found in nature. This is a notion I once discounted until I realized that virtually every moment that I felt peace and interconnectedness with the world came when I was alone in nature. For others, the divine is worship of a shared deity, a belief I grew up with but has long failed to ring true for me. I now take a different view. Whether it is a peacekeeping mission in the Balkans, or just getting off the couch to take my kids to the park when really I'm kind of tired and just want to lay there, or donating a pint of blood, I sincerely believe that it is in service that we harness what is greatest in our humanity and truly come the closest to touching the face of God, if God is your thing. So I have this to say to all of you. Thank you for my service. As a roomful of taxpayers, you enabled me to put on the uniform, get trained as both an air traffic controller and a meteorologist, visit war zones, and understand suffering and heartbreak that comes with them, and to find the value of committing yourself to something larger than myself. Your tax dollars gave me the swift kick in the butt I so richly deserved and needed as a young man. As a member of this congregation for almost a year now, I understand that it is my obligation to quote someone far more famous and wise than myself. So I offer you this poem by William Wordsworth, poet laureate of England in the 1840s. Big difference. Small service is true service while it lasts. Of humblest friends, bright creature, scorn not one. The daisy, by the shadow that it cast, protects the lingering dewdrop from the sun. Be kind, be happy, and most importantly, give of yourself at every opportunity, even if all you have to offer is the shadow that protects the lingering dewdrop from the sun. Amen.